Hello, welcome to the Tips from Alumni panel for the Department of Educational Foundations, Organizations, and Policy. My name is Junior Gonzalez. I manage marketing here at the School of Education, and I have the pleasure of starting us off by introducing our moderator today, Dr. Lori Delale-O'Connor. She is an associate professor and chair of the Department of Educational Foundations, Organizations, and Policy. We call it EFOP here at Pitt Education. She's also the interim director of the Center for Urban Education. Her research focuses on urban education, family and community engagement, as well as out-of-school learning, with a focus on fostering equity and justice for children and youth in urbanized educational systems. She's been at Pitt since 2014 and has been an advisor to countless other scholars, and I can go on and on, but I'll go ahead and pass the torch over to Lori.
Wonderful. I was going to say, you don't need to go on and on. Thank you for that introduction, Junior. And welcome to the students, the alum, the future students, and the friends of Pitt Education that we have joining us live. And then because we'll be recording, maybe watching this after we're done with it. But I'm Lori. As Junior said, a lot of my students call me DOC. And it's such an honor and joy to be here with alum of what is now called EFOP, or Ed Foundations, Organizations, and Policy, but has had different names. And so when you hear folks refer to the program or the department itself, it's had different iterations. And so I'm just so fortunate to be with the folks that are here, some of whom I watched go through these hallways and go through courses and do this work, and some of whom were here before I was, but I've gotten to know as alumni. So enough about me. I'm going to move it on to hearing from and about our panelists. And this first question I'm going to address to everyone, so I expect an answer from all of you. But I'm asking you to just share a brief introduction. Who are you? And why did you choose the School of Education at Pitt and the degree in EFOP or in this department? And I know Neil was really excited about this. And every time I see Neil, he's really excited about Pitt and about his experience. So, Neil, would you mind kicking us off?
Yes, yes. Well, thank you so much. Definitely glad to be here today. So, my name is Neil Parham, and I received my master's in education, master's in higher education management through the School of Ed. But in addition, I also received my undergrad from Pitt in Africana Studies. Outside of that, some other sort of certification. I actually have a human resources certification, both from the Society of Human Resources Management and also the Human Resources Certification Institute that I keep on going just to make sure I, keep that active. So I'm always taking some classes for HR. Throughout my undergrad experience, Pitt Band alumni, and even now currently I'm the secretary for the School of Education Alumni Board, but also a member of the Scripps Society here at Pitt. And outside of my Pitt involvement, which is most of the time, I serve as the director of community affairs for Highmark Health. So, and how I ended up choosing the School of Education, well, I was actually working at Pitt in residence life at the time before I decided to apply. And originally, the School of Ed was not really on my radar at all. I was looking at graduate programs, and I knew I was looking at, Katz Business School. I was looking at Jazzkia. But as I began to learn more about the university structure and interest in areas outside of student affairs, someone mentioned that maybe I should consider the School of Education, the higher education management program, because I had more interest in sort of some of the business side, such as HR, and some of the programs seemed to be more in alignment with those interests. And in addition, the scheduling of the classes sort of worked perfectly with my work schedule since I was still working full time. And prior to being admitted, I actually had a chance to take a few classes. So that's my journey on how I ended up in the School of Ed.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Neil. And we're so glad that you did, right? We're so glad that we were able to say, yes, you're a School of Ed alum. And appreciate whoever it was that told you to check out higher ed. And I should say also, as we think of ed foundations, organizations, and policy, I should mention that that includes higher education, that includes ed policy and social change, that includes urban education as we're thinking about programs. And so, Emily, if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about who you are and why you chose the School of Education and ed foundations, organizations, and policy.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. DOC. Yeah, so I am Emily Koren. I am originally from Buffalo, New York, and that's where I am today, right now. I was living in Truckee, California, teaching high school when I was applying for my PhD program. I was 37 when I started my PhD program, so, I'm a real honest person, so I feel like it all kind of matters, and especially if there are folks out there that are coming to this work from having a career or transitioning. That was kind of where I was. And I was really happy being out in California, had other funded offers, and chose Pitt unfunded over that. And really was teaching high school. I'm an individual with multiple hidden disabilities and was seeing issues in the classroom that I really wanted to kind of take further into more research, and ultimately research and evaluation work. And it really was at the time, uh, it was SCAE, so Social Comparative Analysis in Education under Administrative and Policy Studies, which is a mouthful. But there was something about the breadth of that, which I think will come up later because it's kind of a challenge and an opportunity when it comes to career, I think. But there wasn't really a fit for some of the issues I was thinking about. It wasn't quite special education. And so really after talking to folks, landed on Pitt and ended up being closer to family, but that wasn't necessarily a goal, I guess, per se. So really kind of took a leap and moved back cross country to start in 2017 was when I started my PhD program.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And I didn't know all about that journey, even though we did overlap in
Yeah.
terms of time. And so it's beautiful to hear that, and to hear about the ways you were able to sort of focus on and customize what you wanted to learn about, what mattered to you. So David, would you go next and share a little bit about who you are and why you chose Pitt School of Ed, why you chose the program you did?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Lori. I appreciate it. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Dave Bowlin. I have a lot of branches, I would think, and I don't mean that because I'm probably the senior person here on the panel, but I have a lot of branches related to my kind of journey. Um, I think it started back. Well, currently I live in Ohio, but I'm born and bred in Pittsburgh. I grew up in both in Oakland and South Pittsburgh, so I knew Pitt was somewhere in my destiny at some point. But did some undergraduate work at a few other universities. But I have an older brother who had spent about 40 plus years in education and received his doctorate at Pitt. And when I was a high school principal for about 12 years, I knew that I wanted to continue on and get my doctorate. And so what I was really looking for was something that kind of intersected the between scholarship and practitioner, because I really wanted to dive deep in the area that I focused on was education law and how that affected school leadership and school leaders in general. So I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what the best program was for me. And it just so happened that, ironically, my former school superintendent when I was in high school was on the faculty at Pitt at the time. So he kind of recruited me to come into the program and said, "Hey, I can kind of help you and walk you through, especially in the area of school law." So we spent a lot of time together as my dissertation chair. Um, one kind of funny story is the one of the other professors that my older brother had. She would always write his name on my papers instead of my name, thinking that I don't know, maybe I was him, but anyway, it worked out really, really well. And I think the main reason that I really picked the University of Pittsburgh, besides being a huge Pitt fan, being a huge Pitt person, there's a hidden gem there in the School of Education. And I was part of that other iteration when it was administration and policy studies. But there's a hidden gem there that works with collaboration. It looks into scholarship. It works into really deep level critical thinking that I didn't think I was going to be able to find in a lot of different places. So I was so happy to be a part of that. Similar to Emily, I started actually when I was 37 as well, and so I finished, and it was such an exciting time. But I was able to utilize that in my current role right now. And finally, my current role, I serve as an educational consultant. So I get to work with schools up here in Northeast Ohio, and really kind of hone in my craft, and of which a lot of I give credit to the University of Pittsburgh. So that's my story.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that, Dave. And
Yeah.
I was, taking notes around scholar practitioner, which is something we say a lot here in the School of Ed. And I love that family connection. You don't have to have family that went to Pitt, that you don't have to have lived in Oakland, but I love hearing those stories as well. And Jazzkia, if you would, sort of round us out in terms of those introductions, who you are, and what brought you to Pitt School of Ed and to EFOP.
Thank you. Yes. So as mentioned, my name is Jazzkia Jones, and I got my master's in the higher education management program at Pitt, and I graduated in 2017. So I mean 2021. Oh Lord, I graduated undergrad in 2017, but I started in 2019. And similar to what David was mentioning, I started looking at master's programs really from my supervisor at my previous role. When I graduated undergrad, I started working at a nonprofit in Chicago that focused on first generation inner city students. And I'm a first generation student myself. And so I was there for about 2 years, and my supervisor after 2 years was like, okay, it's time for you to go back to school. And I was like, no, I love what I do here. Right. And she was like, no, you have bigger questions, and the types of programs that you're doing, I think you need to go back to school. And she was also first gen, but she had went and got her master's. And so she was really encouraging me. And so I applied to 5 schools. I got accepted into all 5, but 2 gave me funding, and Pitt was one of those. And so I visited the 2 that gave me funding. And one of them was in a place that was way colder than Pittsburgh. And just did not have the community culture that I was looking for. And then I visited Pittsburgh, and there's just something sweet about that. And I will say that I'm also a Steelers fan. I've been a Steelers fan since I was 7. And so part of it was also, how could I not, right? But I visited Pitt. They invited me for Admitted Students Day, and it was just an amazing experience, from the faculty to my prospective peers that were going to be joining. It allowed me to see myself at Pitt, which I'm glad that I did. And then while I was there, I just had an amazing opportunity to come across scholars that were there that really pushed me. And I think I entered the program thinking about student pathways and ways that we can succeed. And then I ended thinking about faculty and staff. And so I am also more leaning toward the employee perspective of that. So I think that that's interesting. I will put out there, though, I said the funding piece was a big piece, but the other one is I only applied to schools who did not have standardized test requirements. And that is to be transparent in this space, just because I do not believe that that is a true indicator of a student's accessibility within a program. And so I didn't want to go to a school that required that. And so all of the schools that I applied to did not have a standardized test requirement. And then the funding piece was a big piece of it. And I would say from there, now in my current role, I currently work at Georgia Southern University. I am the director for our Office of Institutional Engagement, which really harps on that piece around how do we support our faculty and staff. And so my work really centers around that employee engagement experience, professional development and skill development for our employees here, and then recognition programs. And so that's kind of my portfolio here, and have met so many Pitt alum. Like Neil, I was very involved. I was the vice president for programming for our graduate and professional student government while I was at Pitt. and got a chance to have great graduate assistantships across the School of Ed. And so I'm just so thankful to be here on this panel today.
Wonderful. Thank you all for sharing. And it's wonderful to hear the differences, right? The breadths of experience, the breadth of experiences you all had and what brought you here. But also one of the things that I feel like, you can hear the commonalities. So I hope folks that are contemplating or who are already here are hearing that as well. And I really heard a lot about scholarship, right, that brought you here, community and culture. And I think even across the programs, these are things that are really important to us and really connect with our mission vision in the School of Ed. So now that you've all shared and introduced yourself, told us a little bit about your pathway here, I'm going to open it up. So as folks are thinking, you might want to be quick to unmute. We'll make sure everyone gets a chance. My next question is there something you wish you had known before entering a degree program? Like before you entered this, that you didn't know, but you wish you had known, that you would like to share with the folks that are watching? Again, remembering there are folks who are already pursuing similar pathways to you all or are considering it, right? And that those sort of behind the scenes tips. What did you wish you had known?
Well, I
Lori, I
guess
can
I'll,
jump in.
oh, wait, David.
Go ahead, David.
Okay, thank you. I'll be brief, Neil. I think that my path was eventually a 30+ year career in education, all the way up through school superintendent. And one of the things that I wish I knew at the time when I was applying was the amount of interdisciplinary approaches that the program took. Like, I was thinking that I was going to learn about education and how to be a leader in education. But there was so much more to that. They really brought things around research methodology and economics and human resources and so many different pieces, that was so much interdisciplinary work that it added to the benefit. So I wish I would have known that. It would have made a not an easier choice, but certainly one that would have been made faster, because I think it was such a positive piece.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. And yes, I mean, I think that is one of the things we pride ourselves on, right? That interdisciplinary work. Neil, go ahead.
Right. And as I go back and think, the part of the reason why the School of Ed really wasn't on my radar, because I thought about the School of Ed, I thought that was a school for teachers. And, I'm like, well, I don't want to go into teaching. So that's why it really wasn't, sort of on my radar. This is a place where, they would be preparing K through 12 teachers. But, once I did realize, once somebody mentioned, hey, check out the School of Ed, because it goes beyond, it talks about higher ed management. And when you think about anything that's close to almost like a business school for colleges, I didn't think of the School of Ed would be something like that, or would have any type of program related to that. So that's one thing I wish I knew. Otherwise, I think the School of Ed would probably been top of mind once I started thinking about where to go.
Emily or Jazzkia, I don't know if you want to jump in on this one or wait for another.
I think what I would say, and this is more so toward personal ability, is that you're going to be challenged regardless. And I think people expect that when they enter a program, but I would say for the College of Ed at Pitt, we have some amazing faculty members. And so they bring their amazingness into the classroom, and then they expect you to rise to that amazingness. And with that comes a lot of feedback. And I think that was one thing that I had to take on, is understanding that feedback was feedback with love and care, and not feedback to necessarily like tear me down. And it was really hard because I was an English writing major in undergrad. And so I felt like I could write my life story on. And love notes. Yes, Emily was one of my TAs. And so so she gave me lots of love notes. But yeah, I just thought I was an amazing writer, which I am, but learning APA is a whole nother ball game, especially when they keep updating the editions. And so you have to just take those love notes with a grain of salt and sugar, because they're really there to make you a great writer. And I think that knowing that before you get into a program will change your perspective on that process as you are writing.
I love that. The love notes and the grain of salt and sugar. That is yeah, I mean, yes, that the push is there, but with love because we know you can do it. I love that. I love that. So I'm going to go to the next question unless Emily wants to jump in.
I can just say really quickly, this is still the what we wish we knew. Is that right? Okay. Um, so how strategic, like some people are just better at this than others, and it's not necessarily a strength of mine, but like the idea of like backwards designing your career goals, knowing that it's all going to change. But I was someone who, when I was 11 years old, was told that college wasn't an option for me. And so I was so happy just to get into a PhD program. I was like, cool. And then I wasn't like, this is how I'm going to achieve my goals. I always thought I wanted to be a faculty member, but more on that later. But I was just, I don't know, it was already a win for me. And then obviously I echo a lot of what Jazzkia said about, really being challenged. But I think being strategic can help if you have flexibility. I mean, I was writing my dissertation during the pandemic, so nobody anticipated that that was going to happen. We all had to shift. Um, but yeah, I think also, and maybe this has changed now. I don't want to say that my experience is what y'all's experience will be, but when I was in EFOP, what is now EFOP, there wasn't really a cohort model. And there were other departments in the School of Ed that had all of the students together, whether it was Urban Ed or LRDC, which was now I think has changed, but it was Learning Research Developed. There were other programs that were funded. So I was in an unfunded program. There were other funded. So I had other colleagues within the School of Ed in PhD programs that were in a cohort model with fund. And it was a little bit isolating to come into. And so I guess I didn't know that I would have to build my own cohort. And I know there's like a first year seminar. I'm sure they have that. And so if you're in a situation at whatever level of graduate degree you're pursuing and you don't feel like there's a cohort model, I know it's really strong within the EDD program. Shout out to EDD students. But you kind of have to make your own. And if you don't take that initiative to do that, you might feel isolated. You might fall through the cracks. You might miss out on things that other people know about that you didn't see the posting. So I'll just say that you kind of really have to make your own because there is a cohort for you. There are people for you there, but some departments and centers do a better job at fostering that than others.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point too, because you can't go through it alone, right? Like through any of the departments. And I do think there's been a very concerted effort across our department, but and across programs to think about whether it's a cohort or figuring out how we bring students together and across programs in a way that I think we learn, right? We learn from the students who have come before, and we learned from COVID, right? And being online and what that looked like, because it was very different. So some of what you were pointing to, Emily, I want to ask a question then for you all about that shift to career or kind of what was next. And so as you think about your degree from Pitt, from the School of Ed, how do you feel that your degree, impacted, accelerated your career growth and the skills? Like what did you learn in your degree program, whether that be as we classify hard or soft, like that you think are helpful in your current role?
I'll go
Yeah,
first
please.
here because I kind of alluded to it in my last response. But while I was in my program, so when I was in the higher ed program, we were adding faculty. And so we got a faculty member, Dr. Darius Means. I know he's no longer at the university, but when he was there, he taught a course around organizational development. And I took that course as one of my electives. And that work, along with being in Dr. Gina Garcia's courses and having Emily as a TA and things like that, I think they really posed criticality that I needed for where I am now, especially for communities of like marginalized communities or underserved communities, things like that. Like the questions that were being asked in those spaces and in those courses and what we were writing on and learning about really influenced how I engaged with the practice side, right? As a scholar, I was engaging while writing, but as in the practice side, I was also thinking about how this relates in real time for real people. And when I another part, and I'll put this in there too, I also spoke at commencement for the master's students. And so I was the speaker for our master's students at our commencement. And all of that accumulated together to lead me to where I am here at Georgia Southern. So when I first got hired at Georgia Southern, I was the manager for our Office of Inclusive Excellence. And that specifically focused on supporting our employees, not only with cultural education and competencies, but also our employee resource groups and all of these things that are kind of working together, and serving on the policy review committee, trying to figure out if we are creating and implementing policies that are productive and supportive of all employees at the university. And that work, my confidence in that work came from my time at Pitt, and engaging with people who were challenging me to think a little bit further than what was surface level. And I think that really prepared me for where I am. And especially now that I, have transitioned into for the director of institutional engagement, a lot of my things are institutional wide initiatives. They are things that are coming out of the president's bucket. And to be able to lead in that space, I think a lot of that comfortability came from my engagement at Pitt, my interactions with faculty, but then also the experiences that I took hold of while I was there. So I would say Pitt definitely prepared me for where I am, and prepared me as I think about my own PhD journey, to think critically about what types of programs I want to be in and what curriculum are they teaching, and if they are asking those challenging spaces, or if their graduates are producing scholarship that are talking about certain things, or if they're steering away from it, right? Like, I know what to look for, and it's because of the experiences that I had at Pitt.
Thank you.
And also my engagement, one of the courses I also took was the Black Educational Thought course with Dr. T. Elon Dancy. And so all of those together really provided me that clear framework of what type of work I like to do.
That's wonderful. We love to hear those shout outs and that love, but that critical framing and the way it's moved you forward. Thank you. Other folks about what, how the degree accelerated your career, and what sort of skills or things you learned that you think are helpful in your current role.
So I probably have a different experience, because I do not currently work in the field of higher education, and certainly people might think because I'm at so much Pitt stuff. But when I think about what I learned, I mean, it's definitely applicable to the world and business world, government world, and I've actually had the opportunity to experience all of those after graduating. After graduation, I thought I was going to end up, I had an interest in Pitt HR. So, fortunately there weren't any opportunities, but I got to know some of the people there. Actually ended up in the mayor's office for a few years, working for, two administrations, and then ending up working in corporate. And I've been at Highmark since 2010, where, I work in sort of the community engagement space and working closely with our community partners. So, throughout my experience, I had the opportunity to write so many papers, PTSD, do research, write papers, and present findings. So, and even, doing the literature review, I still think back to that literature review and just the mountains and mountains of information that accumulated for, 13 plus pages of just literature. And so, one thing I really learned, being anywhere, especially if you're working closely with senior leaders, is really how to boil down a lot of information. Where I work now, I have access and handle a lot of information. When you're looking at your leaders, they have limited time. They really want the highlights. So, I think back to my papers, and if I had a half of a page or even of a quarter of a page to say, what are the highlights of all your research about this? What can you tell me in 30 seconds or in a quarter of a page? And so even as I think back to my thesis, and then also some other pages, one thing that sticks out, one of my research papers is on the Fourth Amendment, so search and seizures, and how that applies to residence halls. So I still can remember the points in my head of what ultimately the findings were and everything, and how that applies. Same with my thesis and student involvement and engagement, and how that evolves throughout the experience. So, really being able to take all the data that you're working with and really being able to boil it down, streamline it. If you're talking to somebody, you have 30 seconds or a quarter of a page to make your point across.
No, that's wonderful to hear too. And thinking about, I mean, I think both your entry and then the ways you've used your degree, right? Thinking about those universal skills and the things that you've learned, whether or not you're in higher education, that it's always applicable. So I don't know, Dave or Emily, if you want to address this one. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll jump in right now too. So in the K-12 landscape that I played a lot of time in, there was always this premise that you have to have this credential, and that credential is the proverbial doctorate, right? If you want to move from teacher to principal, from principal to superintendent, you have to have this doctorate. And most likely it was going to be the EDD because we wanted that practitioner piece. We wanted to be able to not only have some scholarly intent, but also be able to apply a lot of what we've learned. So that was certainly, forcing me to kind of move towards obtaining that credential. But then you realize that once you have that credential, it's all the other things at Pitt that I learned within the program that really made a difference in my work. Everybody that I came across had a doctorate, so it wasn't anything that was unique to school administration or school leadership. What was unique was that intersection of being able to now evaluate systems, being able to create leadership capacity in others, being able to think strategically in order to build programs and build human capital. So those are the things that I remember learning about in a lot of my program at Pitt. And so that really propelled me up the ladder relatively quickly because, again, you can have that credential, you can have that degree, but I think it's those other tangible kind of pieces that Pitt offers. And whether it's through a cohort or whether it's through the relationship that you build with your faculty and with your professors, there's things that aren't written in any syllabus. There are things that's not written in any kind of course description that you take away because of that essence that the Pitt program brings. So I think that was something that really helped in my career growth. And finally, the last thing that I would say is full circle. As currently as an adjunct professor at Youngstown State, because I'm waiting for the call from Pitt. I know it's coming soon. So I'm going to just temporarily stay at Youngstown State until I get that call from Pitt. But anyway, I'm working in their doctoral program. And so I'm working with students that are currently writing their dissertations. I'm working as a research methodologist and working with their chapters 3 and 4. So it's come full circle. And now I'm able to infuse not just that research methodology or not just that APA style. I'm able to infuse all those other tangibles as well. And again, that's stuff that comes directly from Pitt.
No, I appreciate that. That's really thoughtful. I was writing down like the Pitt Ed advantage, right? But just talking about being beyond a credential. So I appreciate sort of all the ways you pointed to that and to what that means.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Emily, did you want to jump in or?
Yeah, I think especially thinking about relationships, because that is really in my life and in my work, where I have faith and change is in people and relationships. So I know part of the question is about your current role, and I forgot to say what my current role is, so I apologize. But I actually just started in January as a researcher and evaluator at the University of Nevada, Reno's Nevada Center for Excellence in Disabilities. So it's a remote position. As I said, I'm in Buffalo. Have to shout out the Bills because Jazzkia brought up the Steelers. So, neither one of us made it, but one day. Yeah, I just started in that role. And I work a little bit as a writing coach, and I also do some consulting mostly for a company called Menlo EDU, but I do some consulting. So really research and evaluation, academia adjacent. And then for the past 5 years, I've been teaching in the EDD program at Pitt in the summer for the onboarding course, and that is something that brings me great, great joy. I learned so much, so still learning. But I would say in terms of soft or hard skills, I would say quantitative methods in terms of hard skills. I remember crying and running to the bathroom the first day of Dr. Shafiq's Quant Methods 1 class, and that was as someone who had taken quant methods in my master's program 10 years before. So it wasn't necessarily my first time, but and then I ended up getting doing the minor in quantitative methods. So kind of, I found a way to make it critical. I found a way to make it meaningful. It looked different than what I was seeing professors talk about. It looked different for me, but that was definitely a hard skill. Taking advantage of CLASS, the Center for Latin American Studies. Did I get the name right? So I was able to get a certificate in Latin American social and public policy. And to be honest, that was only because I met someone in the hallway who told me about it, and we met, and I had already had like 5 or 6, like 3/4 of what I needed for the certificate. And so you might have something that you can earn you another credential, that you have basically already worked for, and also, meet meaningful people along the way. So kind of leaning on others. I would also say, again, with self-advocacy, beyond disability studies and accommodation, like there's a lot more advocating that has to happen. Maybe it's in being intentional for whatever reason about the professors, like Jazzkia was saying about being intentional about a school that doesn't have a requirement for standardized testing. I think you can be intentional about where you choose. Some classes are required, obviously, but which classes you choose to take. And so I think that was really something I learned. And then being involved with ASH, which is the Association for the Study of Higher Education, that's really a conference and a community that is meaningful to me. AERA, the big research organization, I have a really hard time with. And it's too big for me, frankly. And I like to go once in a while when I'm funded to do so, but and presenting, with collaborators. But the ASH community, that's a space. And then the last thing about that is the local context. I think that's something I learned at Pitt. Really not just coming to Pittsburgh for Pitt, but immersing yourself, working, learning, being in the local Pittsburgh and community, local Pittsburgh, eating, in the local Pittsburgh community. I think it would be a missed opportunity to go through a program at Pitt and not learn more about Pittsburgh. And as someone who wasn't from Pittsburgh, that was something that I learned while I was there.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you, Emily. I was going to say that's so much great information too, thinking about the connections. You talked about certificates, which we have even more opportunities for that, the local context, that self-advocacy piece, and also conferences, right? Or professional organizations, which across responses folks have mentioned as part of the growth of that network. So I want to make sure that our audience knows, I know it was in the chat, but if folks want to ask questions, you have specific questions, please drop them in the chat and I'll make sure to share and ask them. My next question for you all is, I'm between two. So I'm looking at who is at least right now online. We have a lot of alum. We have some current students, some faculty that are here joining us right now live. And so I guess I want to ask the question about your job search experience after graduation, because I know we have some folks that are online that are either job searching or will be soon, but just anything you want to offer in terms of tips or in terms of again, things you wish you had known, but what that job search process looked like, if anyone wants to share.
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick because I probably have had the most jobs of anybody here, given my experience, I guess we could say. Yeah, I think in brief, I would say that one of the things that's important, obviously, when you're looking at a particular position or a job, it's important to let what come out, let how that come out in the process. But I think it's most important to talk about how all of that has impacted in the world that you would want to work in. Meaning, let's say in K to 12 education, where I spent a lot of time, it's one thing to talk about all the information and knowledge that I gained, but it's important when I'm looking at a particular job or looking at a particular career to talk about how that knowledge is going to impact student learning, how that knowledge is going to impact teacher capacity building, how that knowledge is going to increase school improvement overall, because we know there's a lot of metrics right now in schools that are being assessed. So I would say the number one thing that I would say that is important is just being able to reflect on impact when you're looking at any kind of job down the line.
No, I appreciate that. That's a really direct and important thing to think about too. And I think ties in with some of the answers that you all gave, right, as that. Other responses.
So I'll go. So similar to Emily, I was in my program when the pandemic hit, and I graduated when the pandemic hit. And so I was job searching when the pandemic was in full effect in 2021, and that influenced a lot of my job search process. It was very different. It wasn't what I expected or what I had gone through when I had graduated from my undergrad. Some states were back in full effect and you were in the office, and some states were not. Some places you had to have the vaccine, and some places did not require it. And so it was a lot of different factors that were in there. But I'd say similar to what David just mentioned, not necessarily, I mean, not only thinking of the impact, but also the alignment. As I mentioned, I knew what type of work I wanted to do and where I wanted to be most impactful for myself. And so I was looking for jobs in that space. But for me, I have to have organized. So I have lists, I have Excels that it's like city, state, location, the pay, the this, all of the things. And so I was filling those pieces out. And with that, I knew I'm from Texas. I don't think I mentioned that at the beginning, but born and raised Dallas, Texas, which also makes the Steelers such a funny team for me to love. But my family doesn't let me live it down. It's fine. But when I was looking, I knew I wanted to get back to the South. I got my undergrad in the Midwest. I got my master's in the Midwest. And I was like, okay, I've had enough of the Midwest. I love you all dearly to visit, but I want to move back to the South. And so I was looking for roles that were in those states that I consider to be livable for someone of my identities and the identities that I wanted to protect. And so I think that that's an additional thing, not only the impact of the role and the responsibilities of that role, but also your alignment and where you feel like you would be most supported. Because I know a lot of people who go for the money or go for, the glitz and the glams of the positions. A lot of these companies, right, provide a lot of glitz and glam, and then you get there and it doesn't necessarily align. And you have to figure out what that alignment is most prioritized in, right? Is your values most important to align with, or is it the role and the responsibilities that you're doing, your actual day-to-day actions, or is it the money? And if the money is most important, right, really understanding where it aligns and go through there. But then also be open-minded. And that's a really big thing. I think a lot of people do close off certain roles because the titles don't match or it doesn't sound the same. I'll say every single role I've ever had as a professional, I was the first person to hold that. It did not exist before me. The role had never existed at the company. And every single role, even my graduate assistantships, I was the first person to stay in there. But my role when I was in Chicago, my roles here, I've been the first person to ever be in that position. The job description was created for me, is what I like to think about. And so you have to be really open when you're looking at these things, because the number one question is, so what do you want to do after? And sometimes you don't have a title, but you have a feeling and you have a purpose. And so you have to align yourself with that purpose.
So I see there's a question in the chat, but I also want to, I feel like I saw Emily writing. And so to me, that indicates like, I want to make sure I say this. So if that's true, and I wasn't misinterpreting, Emily, did you want to share something before I ask an additional or different question?
Sure, thank you. And this was about our job search experience, right? Is that
Correct.
Yeah, I guess I want to say, and I think we're all here because we know and love Pitt, and Pitt only helped the job search experience. But if my goal was to be a faculty member, a tenure track faculty member, or clinical, any kind of full-time faculty member, then I have not made that goal. I have failed at that goal. And this has definitely been a journey. I finished my PhD in 2022. I did a postdoc at the university, a remote postdoc with the University of Southern California, kind of staying in my scholarly family tree um, from 2022 to 2024. And I've been on the faculty job search, I think 3 or 4 times. I've been the finalist, gone to every stage. And it's a lot of learning. And I think you've heard about like the resume of failures and where it gets you. I'm still in academia. I'm still very much doing research and same kind of work, and getting to, I think, be a disability justice scholar and teach. So it's all there, but it didn't look like what I wanted it to look like. And now as a mom, I had a 7-year fertility journey and then a baby in the NICU for 3 months. So I know that's a lot of personal information, but I say that because there's going to be something in your life that you didn't plan for. And now I'm having to rethink, what am I willing to compromise on to be would I live in Oklahoma? I mean, I'm not going to pick on Oklahoma. I don't know anyone in Oklahoma, and I'm sure it's a lovely state. But it doesn't work for me personally to live in Oklahoma. I feel so bad. I shouldn't have said any specific state. But what are you willing to compromise? What are you not? If I had graduated, I have a colleague from Pitt who went all the way through, right? Bachelor's, master's, PhD. And she was able to say to me, I'll go anywhere, right? I could take any job, I'll go anywhere. And maybe if it had been a different season of my life, maybe that would be the case. So that kind of limits you. What kind of work-life balance do you want? So, maybe it will work out, maybe it won't. And I have a different perspective on it now. And I'm still close with all of my mentors, but I do think it's important. And I will say, if there are folks listening to this that are on the faculty job market, nothing means anything. If a job, like Jazzkia said about a feeling, if there's a job and they say they're looking for a quantitative researcher and you do qual, and everything else looks good, apply. That's one thing I've learned. These committees do not know what they're looking for. I recently applied for a job right here at the University of Buffalo, and it was a disability studies interdisciplinary position. They were hiring 2 professors. I figured at least I would get a first round interview, right? There's 2 positions. That's 2. And it turns out, and I got the forum email, and I'm not saying this as a disgruntled person. I'm saying this to say it really might have nothing to do with your qualifications, because what I found out actually just this week was that it was structurally not possible for them to support a person with a PhD in education because the job was housed in the College of Arts and Sciences. So anyone who had a PhD in education was automatically filtered out. Your application would never be looked at, or they probably looked at it. So it probably has nothing to do with you. There's a lot of, ivory tower red tape, whatever you want to say. So you really have to keep pursuing that feeling and think about holistically, what you want from your life. So I'm still on my journey. I'm still learning, and I'm still here.
I so appreciate that. And I'm glad that I noticed you were writing because I feel like you had a lot to say in that space. So I know we're going to transition really shortly, but I have one last question. At least that's what my timeline looks like, that actually came in through the chat from Ashlyn Salvage, who is a current student, and says, "Hi, thank you for all this. I'm wondering how you stayed connected with Pitt after graduating as an alumni." So I feel like that is a good, nice ending sort of transition question. But how did you stay connected? And Neil, since we didn't get you on the last one, can you start us off? Because I know I see you here all the time.
Oh, yes. and there's really only one football team that matters, by the way, and that's the Pitt Panthers. So I heard Steelers and whatnot, and I'm like, yeah. So just FYI for everybody out there. But so you're actually in the right place. The School of Ed I'm the secretary of the School of Ed Alumni Council. The School of Ed has opportunities for alumni to be engaged through various programs like this one, various volunteer programs, mentorship programs. So this is the place to start, right, in your department. But, broadly as well, if you have any other interest from the university, each department has sort of ways that you can be engaged. The Pitt Alumni Association has ways that you can be engaged. There's just so many different ways, based on the time you have available, what your interests are. If you're interested in sports, Pitt has wonderful sports teams across the board. So there's just so many ways that you can think about being engaged and even, mentoring a student. If you're, thinking about, I want to give, my knowledge and maybe the incoming freshmen or incoming grad students, that's another way to be engaged is how, doing mentorship. So it's really thinking about, the sky's the limit, I say, but, when in doubt, always start, within the School of Ed. That is a place to start just by getting involved with a lot of the activities that are offered.
I love that. I love that. The sky's the limit, but always start with the School of Ed. I feel like I need that on a t-shirt. I don't know if anyone else wanted to chime in about alumni because I want to make sure we transition. And there we go. I was going to say in the chat, Madison just put out, please don't hesitate to contact Mike Haas and Madison Clark in Development and Alumni Affairs. I think that also we're going to transition to our Director of Admissions and Enrollment, but I think the question that's asked right after there, and I think maybe Ian, is there an opportunity to connect with EDD students or alum to speak directly to that experience? So I know folks might have specific questions depending on the program that they're interested in or that they are currently in. And so I'm going to transition now to Jackie Brazil, who is our Director of Admissions Enrollment, who's going to talk about our programs and wrap us up.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you all for being here. It's been lovely to hear from all of the panelists on their experience with the Pitt School of Education and after and what they're doing now. So thank you all for sharing your stories with us as well. I just wanted to really quickly let you know about the admissions process in case we have any students on the line that are thinking about applying to one of our programs. The processes do vary a little bit depending if you're applying at the master's or the doctoral level, but generally speaking, they all start in the same place in the GradCast application. It's an online application portal. All of our programs are listed there. So if you're wanting to apply to multiple programs, that's an option too. But you just go in, you do all the things a person normally does in an application process, fill out the application. We do require 3 letters of recommendation, so you'll have to just put the information for your recommenders in there, and then the system will automatically email them, so you don't need to worry about going out and doing the hard legwork of reminding your recommenders. The system will do that for you. We require transcripts from every institution you've ever attended. So even if you took a 3-credit class during your high school time at a local community college, we do still need those transcripts. That is required by the Office of the Provost. We also require a resume and a personal statement for every single program. So showing us what you've been working on, what you've been doing. And then the personal statement kind of tells us why this program, why Pitt, why are you a good fit for this? Also, why are we a good fit for you? How do you align with our mission and vision? And we also, especially at the doctoral level, ask you to identify some faculty that you're interested in working with so we can kind of see what your research interests are and where they might align with some of our faculty members. So that's kind of the short gist of it. As I said, it is program specific. I am happy to talk through the specifics of each program, deadlines, all of that good stuff with you on an individual basis. I will drop my name and my email in the chat so you can follow up with me. Ian, also in regards to your question, if you want to reach out to me, I know we've talked before. Glad you're here. Good to see you. If you want to reach out to me directly, I can put you in touch with Career Services, where we can probably find a current student that would be willing to have an email correspondence with you and answer some of your more specific questions.
Wonderful.
Sorry, I was just going to say I'm just putting my email in the chat right now in case anybody wants to follow up. But other than that, thank you all for being here again. I appreciate you. And Dr. O'Connor, if you want to get us out, or I can, either way.
No, I'm happy to. I also put my email in the chat. As Junior said when he introduced me, I am currently the chair of the department and so have insights into all of our different programs, also know sort of folks to direct you to, including wonderful people like the alumni we have here. And I just want to say a huge thank you to the folks who are joining us right now live, to the folks who watch this later. You won't have the live experience, the fun. I'm not going to comment on football teams at all, but go Steelers, hail to Pitt, also go Panthers, all of that important stuff. But also to say, as you're watching or thinking about it, Pittsburgh and the university just contain multitudes. And so you don't have to like sports at all and come here. We have a lot of, as Emily was saying, there's just a lot of wonderful things in the Pittsburgh area, our food scene, our art scene, just so many fantastic communities within the Pitt community and outside of the Pitt community to get involved in. So we look forward to hearing from you, whether you're a current student, alum, or perspective, or like I like to think, future student. And yeah, so stay in touch and hail to Pitt. And thanks for being here. Take care.